I always believed that trust was the most inviolable foundation of love. It was a conviction I held close to my heart, a belief that love meant sharing secrets, dreams, and vulnerabilities without reservation. My relationship with Jason had, for years, seemed to embody that ideal. His warm smile, his attentive eyes, and the effortless way he made me feel safe had convinced me that I had finally found my forever. Yet, life, with its unpredictable twists, had something entirely different in store. The first inkling that something was amiss came on a cool autumn evening. We were having dinner at our favorite little bistro, a cozy spot tucked away on a quiet street lined with golden-leaved trees. The gentle clinking of cutlery and soft murmur of other patrons had always made the place feel like our own secret haven. But that night, as the conversation lulled into comfortable silence, I noticed a subtle detail that sent a shiver down my spine. Jason's phone lay forgotten on the table, its screen still aglow with unread notifications. At first, I tried to convince myself that it was nothing more than an innocent oversight, a lapse in our shared routine. Yet, as days turned into weeks, the unsettling details began to accumulate like shards of a broken mirror. There were the late-night absences he brushed off with vague explanations, hurried texts that he would furtively delete whenever I glanced over his shoulder, and the occasional inexplicable phone vibrations when we were together. With each small anomaly, the façade of our perfect relationship started to crack. Late one night, I found myself unable to sleep, my mind a tumult of questions and doubts. The once soothing silence of our shared apartment now echoed with the sounds of my own heartbeat. I lay in bed, the darkness punctuated by the soft hum of the city outside, and the image of Jason's missing phone replayed in my mind. It was then that I made a decision. I would discover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The following days became a careful exercise in observation and quiet investigation. I watched the way Jason's eyes would momentarily glaze over whenever his phone buzzed with an incoming message, the fleeting hesitation in his smile when I asked about his day, and the secretive glances he exchanged with someone who wasn't me. Every detail, however trivial it might have seemed, was logged meticulously in my mind, and, eventually, on scraps of paper hidden away in a drawer. One particularly crisp morning, I decided to rummage through our shared digital life. I started with his calendar entries, which I had access to from our joint account. There, hidden amongst mundane reminders and grocery lists, were cryptic notes for dinners, appointments, and meetings that didn't quite match his usual schedule. The puzzle pieces were slowly coming together, painting a picture that was both shocking and heartbreakingly clear. It wasn't long before I uncovered the digital breadcrumbs he'd left behind. In the depths of our shared cloud account, I discovered a series of messages and photographs that no amount of rational explanation could justify, a string of texts, a mixture of playful banter and intimate secrets, revealed that Jason had been spending his nights with someone else. The messages, sent in haste and later scrubbed from his phone, were now immortalized in my carefully archived screenshots. Alongside them were images, snapshots of stolen moments that captured laughter, secret meetings at dimly lit restaurants, and gestures of intimacy meant only for those in the clandestine circle of infidelity. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the damning evidence. The face of the woman in those photos was both mesmerizing and disconcerting. Rachel, his coworker, was someone who had always seemed confident and self-assured, an attractive presence in any room. In hindsight, her role in Jason's life had been masked by her charm and effortless professionalism. But now, in the light of betrayal, her allure transformed into a symbol of everything I had lost. The emotional onslaught was overwhelming. Anguish, anger, and disbelief warred within me, each vying for dominance over the other. I had been so utterly blinded by love that I had ignored the subtle hints until the truth emerged in all its brutal clarity. And yet, as the initial shock subsided, something unexpected began to kindle within me. a spark of defiance, a determination to reclaim my self-worth. I realized that I could allow this betrayal to shatter me, or I could transform it into fuel for my own resurrection. In the days that followed, I became a silent architect of my own revenge. I meticulously compiled every piece of evidence, carefully cataloging the incriminating texts, digital receipts, and the most painful of all, the photographs capturing Jason and Rachel in their forbidden trysts. I created a dossier that was both a chronicle of heartbreak and a blueprint for retribution. It was as though every sleepless night, every moment of quiet despair, was being channeled into something powerful, something that would ensure Jason's infidelity was laid bare for all to see. Yet, even as I prepared my arsenal, I was not without moments of introspection. I revisited memories of our early days, the long walks in the park, the whispered promises over candlelit dinners, and the dreams we had woven together for a future that now felt irretrievably lost. Each recollection was bittersweet, a reminder of the love I had once believed in so passionately. But that love, like a fragile sculpture, had been shattered by deceit. In its place grew a resolve that was as unyielding as it was ingenious. Every detail of my investigation was executed with care. I became almost surgical in my approach, quietly gathering evidence while maintaining an outward appearance of normalcy. I couldn't afford to let him suspect that I was on to him. The last thing I needed was for him to destroy the very evidence I was amassing. The tension was palpable, a constant undercurrent that ran through every conversation, every glance, and every hushed phone call in the dead of night. It was during one of these nerve-wracking evenings, as the rain pelted against the window and the city seemed to whisper its own secrets, that I received a cryptic message from an unexpected source, a trusted friend who had always sensed that something was amiss. This friend, whose loyalty was as unwavering as it was discreet, confirmed what I had long suspected. Jason's company was planning its annual retreat, an event celebrated for its pomp and corporate pageantry. This retreat, attended by colleagues and high-ranking officials alike, would be the perfect stage for the final act of my carefully orchestrated revenge. In the weeks that led up to the retreat, my determination grew. I forged a secret alliance with my trusted friend, a silent partner, in this elaborate plan. Together, we plotted how best to use the evidence I had compiled. Every detail of the retreat, from the presentation systems to the layout of the meeting halls, was scrutinized. We had to ensure that every second of my planned revelation would hit with maximum impact, leaving no room for Jason to salvage even a shred of dignity. As the day of the retreat approached, a sense of inevitability began to settle over me. The memories of love and betrayal, of hopes and shattered dreams, intermingled with a burning desire for justice. I rehearsed my plan over and over in my mind, every scenario meticulously mapped out until even the smallest variables were accounted for. The idea of exposing Jason in such a public forum was both terrifying and exhilarating. I was no longer the naive girl who had once believed in fairy tale love. I was now a woman transformed by betrayal, ready to reclaim her power. That fateful evening, as the retreat's formal proceedings drew to a close, I could feel the tension in the air like a living, breathing entity. The conference hall was bathed in a soft golden glow, and the buzz of conversations filled the space with a sense of camaraderie. Yet, beneath that veneer of professionalism, I could sense the undercurrents of something far more volatile. It was the calm before the storm, a moment pregnant with the promise of reckoning. Jason, who until then had worn his usual mask of confidence and charm, now seemed almost distracted, his eyes occasionally darting toward his phone as if seeking reassurance from an unseen source. My heart pounded in my chest as I took my position near the digital presentation system, my friend quietly giving me the signal that everything was in place. With a deep breath and a steadying hand, I initiated the sequence of events that would shatter the evening's deceptive tranquility. I accessed the retreat's presentation system, a tool meant for celebrating corporate successes, and, instead, loaded the dossier that chronicled every act of betrayal. The first image flickered onto the screen, an unassuming snapshot of a message exchange that in any other context might have been dismissed as harmless. But in that moment, as the image illuminated the darkened room, it was like a spark that ignited the powder keg of Jason's carefully constructed illusion. Murmurs rippled through the audience. At first, there was confusion, then a dawning horror, as one slide after another revealed the depth of his deceit. The room's atmosphere shifted from one of conviviality to one of stunned silence and disbelief. Jason's confident façade began to crumble under the weight of each incriminating detail that played out on the screen before him. In that electrifying moment, as I saw the panic in his eyes and the desperate attempts at concealment, I realized that I was reclaiming not just my self-respect, but my identity. The girl who had once trusted with all her heart was now a woman who had transformed her pain into a weapon of truth and retribution. I felt an inner calm, a certainty that no amount of betrayal could ever diminish the strength I had discovered within myself. As the slideshow continued, every whispered conversation, every secret rendezvous, and every hidden message was laid, bare for all to see. The evidence was irrefutable. Colleagues who had once admired Jason's professionalism now looked on with a mixture of shock and dismay. The weight of betrayal settled in the room, and even as Jason tried in vain to gather his scattered thoughts, I knew that this was only the beginning of a long, transformative journey. In the wake of that fateful presentation, as whispers and murmurs filled the hall, I stood there, both numb and resolute, knowing that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I was not defined by the pain of betrayal. I was defined by the strength to rise above it, a strength born from the very depths of heartbreak. The retreat ended in disarray, leaving behind a trail of shattered illusions and unanswered questions. As I walked away from the hall, the weight of what I had done settled heavily on my shoulders. Yet, each step was also a step toward reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my future. The echo of that night would resonate for years to come, a constant reminder that even in the face of the deepest betrayal, one could forge a path of resilience and ingenuity. The fallout of that electrifying evening lingered long after the lights in the conference hall had dimmed. In the days that followed the retreat, the corridors of Jason's workplace became haunted by whispered rumors and sideways glances. Could feel the weight of every knowing stare, the murmur of conversations that echoed the public shaming of a man once revered. Even as I stepped out into the crisp morning air, the memory of that night clung to me like a second skin, a reminder of both the pain of betrayal and the strength it had ignited within me. In the immediate aftermath, my life became a study in contrasts. There was the lingering adrenaline rush from the grand reveal, a heady mix of triumph and terror that coursed through my veins long after the digital images had faded from the screen. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see Jason's eyes, wide with panic and regret, as the truth unfolded before a room of his peers. For a fleeting moment, I felt invincible, a phoenix rising from the ashes of my own shattered trust. But as the initial shock wore off, the reality of the situation set in. The public exposure of Jason's infidelity had not only upended his professional life, but had sent ripples through the intimate circles of our mutual friends, colleagues, and even family. I began receiving messages from those who had once admired our relationship, their words mingling sympathy with shock. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that," one colleague texted. "I always knew something was off," admitted a distant friend. Their words, though meant to comfort, sometimes stung with the reminder that I had let down someone I once trusted, myself. At work, I encountered an unexpected mix of reactions. Some colleagues offered silent nods of understanding when our eyes met in the hallway, while others avoided me entirely, as if my presence was a reminder of the scandal that had rocked their world. Even as whispers followed me, I found solace in the fact that the truth had been laid bare. I was no longer a passive participant in my own narrative, but the architect of my destiny. The days that followed were a crucible of emotions. I would find myself oscillating between moments of intense vindication and deep-seated sorrow. Late at night, as the world outside drifted into a quiet lull, I sat alone with my thoughts. The documents I had painstakingly assembled, a dossier of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately retribution, lay scattered across my desk like a mosaic of my life's unraveling tapestry. In these solitary moments, a deeper introspection took hold. I began to question not just Jason's integrity, but my own role in a relationship where trust had been so recklessly exploited. Had I been naive, or had I been complicit in ignoring the red flags that, in hindsight, screamed for attention? These questions were both a source of torment and a catalyst for transformation. The pain of betrayal was unmistakable, yet it was also a mirror reflecting the parts of myself that I had long neglected: the quiet strength, the fierce independence, the capacity for reinvention. I started writing in a journal, pouring my heart onto pages that quickly filled with raw emotion and introspective reflections. In one entry, I wrote, "Tonight, the silence is loud with the echoes of a love that was lost, but also with the promise of a new beginning. I refuse to be defined by my past. I am more than the betrayal. I am the courage to stand in the aftermath and rebuild." These words became my mantra, a steady beacon guiding me through the turbulent nights. The revelation had irrevocably altered the landscape of my life, forcing me to re-examine everything I had taken for granted. Every familiar place, the bistro where we once laughed together, the park where we had shared whispered secrets, now bore the weight of painful memories. It was as if the world had shifted, tilting on its axis to accommodate the new reality of betrayal and heartbreak. I found myself retracing the steps of our past, revisiting the moments that once defined our love, only to see them now in a different light. A sunset walk along the river became a bittersweet reminder of promises made and broken. A cozy dinner that once exuded warmth now resonated with a hollow echo of what might have been. Yet, amid this bittersweet nostalgia, there was also a burgeoning sense of liberation, a realization that every ending was also the seed of a new beginning. The process of reconfiguring my world was not immediate, nor was it free of setbacks. There were days when the heaviness of grief threatened to pull me back into the abyss, when the familiar ache of loneliness and regret crept in uninvited. But in those moments, I drew strength from the evidence of my own resilience. I began to embrace a new identity, one that was shaped by both the scars of betrayal and the determination to rise above them. I took deliberate steps to surround myself with positivity. I reconnected with friends who had been the unsung heroes during my darkest hours, their support a lifeline in the sea of emotional chaos. I even found solace in creative pursuits, painting, writing, and long meandering walks in the countryside that allowed me to process the layers of my emotions. Slowly, the shattered pieces of my heart began to mend, forming a mosaic that was uniquely mine. Meanwhile, the reverberations of that explosive night did not spare Jason. His once impeccable reputation was now tarnished, and he struggled to navigate the aftermath of public disgrace. I learned through snippets of conversations and hushed phone calls that he was facing not only professional setbacks, but also a personal crisis that threatened to unravel the carefully curated image he had maintained for so long. In a rare moment of reflection, I caught a glimpse of Jason in a cafe near his office. There was a haunted look in his eyes, a mixture of regret and disbelief, as if he were trying to comprehend the magnitude of his actions. He was not the man I had once loved, not the man who had promised forever. His presence served as a stark reminder that betrayal leaves no soul unscarred, that every action has a ripple effect that touches more lives than one might imagine. Though I felt no remorse for the damage that his deception had wrought, I couldn't help but ponder the complexities of human frailty. In the quiet moments of reflection, I wondered if there was a part of him that would someday understand the cost of his choices, a realization that might prompt him to seek redemption, or at the very least, a semblance of accountability. But that was a thought for another time. For now, my focus remained fixed on my own journey toward reclaiming the parts of me that had been lost in the wake of betrayal. As weeks turned into months, the initial shock of the betrayal began to fade, replaced by a steady, unwavering resolve. I began to see the scandal not as an end, but as a pivot, a chance to reinvent myself and to claim a narrative that was entirely my own. I transformed the pain into a powerful catalyst for change, harnessing every ounce of my experience to fuel a rebirth that transcended the confines of a broken relationship. I enrolled in courses that challenged my creativity and intellect, expanding my horizons beyond the narrow confines of heartache. I found that the very skills I had once used to nurture a fragile love, patience, attention to detail, and the ability to observe, were now instrumental in building a new future. Each class, each conversation, and each new piece of knowledge was a step away from the past and a stride toward a future defined by my own terms. With every day that passed, I reclaimed a little more of my identity. I started to see the beauty in solitude, the strength in vulnerability, and the endless possibilities that lay beyond the ruins of what once was. I became a silent advocate for self-reliance and authenticity, sharing my story with those who sought inspiration in the face of betrayal. In doing so, I discovered that my pain was not a solitary burden, but a universal language of resilience that connected me with others who had weathered their own storms. In the midst of this transformative period, an unexpected opportunity presented itself, a chance encounter with someone who would become both a confidant and a mentor. At a local art exhibit, I met Elena, a woman whose life had been marked by her own trials and triumphs. Over a cup of coffee in a sunlit corner of a bustling cafe, we shared stories of loss, healing, and the unyielding will to rise again. Elena's words resonated deeply with me. Sometimes, she said, the greatest art is born from the deepest scars. Our experiences, however painful, shape us into masterpieces of resilience. Her perspective was both comforting and invigorating, offering a fresh lens through which to view my own journey. She encouraged me to embrace my story fully, to honor both the pain and the beauty that had come from every shattered moment. Inspired by Elena's wisdom, I began to channel my experiences into creative expression. I started working on a series of paintings that captured the raw emotions of betrayal, loss, and eventual rebirth. Each brushstroke was an act of defiance, a bold declaration that I would not allow the past to dictate my future. My art became a mirror of my soul, reflecting the intricate interplay between darkness and light, despair and hope. This creative journey also opened new doors in my professional life. I was invited to share my story at a local conference on resilience and personal transformation. Standing before an audience of strangers, I recounted my experience, not as a tale of victimhood, but as a testament to the power of reinvention. The vulnerability in my voice, tempered by the conviction of someone who had faced her demons head-on, struck a chord with many. In that moment, I realized that my journey had not only healed me, but had also become a beacon for others navigating their own struggles. As the months progressed, I learned to navigate the delicate balance between remembrance and renewal. The memory of betrayal still surfaced on quiet nights, yet it no longer defined me. Instead, it served as a reminder of the strength I had unearthed in the depths of despair, a strength that was now the cornerstone of my identity. I discovered that true healing was not about erasing the scars of the past, but about transforming them into symbols of resilience and growth. Every step forward was a declaration of independence, from the lingering shadows of a painful past to the radiant possibilities of the future. I embraced new challenges with an open heart, each one an opportunity to expand the boundaries of who I could become. I cultivated new friendships, ventured into unfamiliar professional territories, and even dared to dream of love again. This time with the wisdom of someone who had already weathered a storm. In quiet moments, as I walked through the city streets bathed in the gentle glow of twilight, I found solace in the thought that my journey was far from over. The scars of betrayal might remain, but they were no longer a mark of defeat. Instead, they were badges of honor, reminders of a battle fought and won, of a life reclaimed through sheer force of will and the relentless pursuit of authenticity. As I stand at the threshold of a future unwritten, I realize that every moment, every tear, every breath, every heartbeat has led me to this point. The journey from betrayal to empowerment has been long and arduous, yet it has forged within me a spirit that is unbreakable. I no longer see the past as a series of missteps, but as stepping stones that paved the way to the person I am today. Looking back, I see a path marked by both pain and perseverance, a path that has transformed me in ways I never imagined possible. I've learned that trust, while fragile, is not the sole foundation of love. Rather, it is our ability to rebuild and redefine ourselves that truly matters. The scars I bear are not symbols of my failure, but of my journey towards self-discovery and renewal. In sharing my story with others, whether through heartfelt conversations, artistic expressions, or public talks, I have found a new sense of purpose. I have become an advocate for those who feel lost in the wake of betrayal, a living testament to the fact that even in the darkest moments, there exists a spark of light waiting to be ignited. I now understand that my past, with all its complexities, has given me a unique perspective, a perspective that enables me to empathize with others and to inspire hope where it once seemed all but lost. The journey is far from linear. There are still moments when the memories of betrayal threaten to overwhelm me, when the weight of the past feels too heavy to bear. But in those times, I remind myself of the truth I have come to embrace, that every ending is also a beginning, and every heartbreak carries the seed of a new life. I have learned to honor my feelings without allowing them to paralyze me, to cherish the lessons of the past while looking forward to the promise of tomorrow. In the weeks that followed the public revelation, my life settled into an uneasy rhythm, a delicate balance between the relentless pursuit of personal growth and the persistent shadows of the past. Every day presented a new challenge, reconciling the raw pain of betrayal with the burgeoning hope of renewal. The world I once knew had been irreversibly altered, and in its wake, I found myself standing at the crossroads of redemption and uncertainty. Mornings became a quiet ritual of reflection. As the first light of day crept through my curtains, I would sit by the window with a cup of tea, watching the city stir awake. It was in these moments that I allowed myself to acknowledge the full spectrum of my emotions, the ache of lost trust, the sting of humiliation, and yet, the steady pulse of newfound strength. I had learned that healing was not a straight path, but rather a labyrinth of moments both painful and empowering, each step a testament to my ability to move forward, despite the weight of yesterday. Forgiveness, an elusive concept that had once seemed like a distant, unattainable ideal, began to take shape in unexpected ways. I often found myself wrestling with the idea: should I forgive Jason for the deception that had upended my life? Was forgiveness a sign of weakness, or could it be a liberating act of reclaiming my narrative? These questions swirled in my mind during long walks along familiar streets, now tinged with bittersweet memories of what once was. I eventually came to see forgiveness not as an absolution of his actions, but as a gift I could give myself. A way to unburden my heart and reclaim the space needed for personal growth. It was not about forgetting or condoning what had happened. It was about liberating myself from the endless cycle of bitterness. In private journal entries and quiet meditations, I began to articulate this delicate truth, that forgiveness was the beginning of reclaiming my identity, and that the true act of courage lay in embracing vulnerability once again. Amid this reflective period, life surprised me with an unexpected encounter. At a community event celebrating local art and creativity, I met Daniel, a kind-eyed stranger whose calm demeanor and thoughtful presence sparked something deep within me. Daniel, a writer and artist himself, carried the marks of life's struggles, with an air of quiet resilience that resonated with my own journey. Our conversation began innocently enough, discussing art, literature, and the ways in which creativity could mend even the most shattered of souls. Over several shared evenings at intimate gatherings and art workshops, Daniel gradually became a confidant, a person who listened without judgment and who offered insights that felt both wise and empathetic. Through his eyes, I began to see that the wounds of betrayal, while indelible, could serve as the raw material for a beautiful and transformative rebirth. However, as our bond deepened, I was forced to confront the blurred lines between moving on and clinging to the remnants of a love that had been irreparably damaged. Daniel's gentle encouragement and unwavering support provided solace, yet I found myself questioning whether this emerging connection was a genuine promise of new love or merely a transient distraction from the lingering ache of the past. Each conversation, each shared smile, and each silent moment of understanding left me teetering on the edge of uncertainty, wondering if I was ready to risk my heart once again. The days turned into a mosaic of introspection and unexpected encounters. I threw myself into creative pursuits with renewed vigor. Painting became an emotional catharsis, each stroke a release of pent-up pain and a declaration of rebirth. My canvases, once filled with the dark hues of despair, now gradually transformed into vibrant expressions of resilience and hope. The act of creation became a sanctuary, a realm where I could channel the chaos of my inner world into something tangible and beautiful. At the same time, the professional realm that had once been a battleground of whispers and shattered reputations began to take on a new meaning. I reconnected with colleagues and mentors who recognized the transformation in me. A woman who had weathered the storm of betrayal and emerged with a quiet, unyielding strength. In boardroom meetings and after work gatherings, my voice grew steadier and my presence more assured. I had learned that vulnerability was not a liability, but a source of authenticity that could inspire others. Yet, amid these small victories, there were moments when the ghosts of the past resurfaced. An unexpected phone call from a former friend, a chance glimpse of a familiar silhouette in a crowded street. Each reminder brought with it a rush of conflicting emotions. In these fleeting instances, I would close my eyes and breathe deeply, grounding myself in the present while acknowledging that the path to healing was paved with both progress and setbacks. As the season changed, so too did the nature of my interactions with Jason. Although our paths no longer crossed with the intimacy they once had, his presence lingered like a distant echo, a reminder of both the pain I had endured and the transformative journey I had embarked upon. I encountered him occasionally, in professional settings, where the weight of our shared history was palpable, though never openly discussed. In these brief, charged exchanges, I could see in his eyes a mixture of regret, resignation, and perhaps a silent acknowledgement of the irreversible damage wrought by his choices. One day, after a particularly challenging meeting, I found myself unexpectedly alone in a quiet corridor. Jason appeared, his expression subdued, his usual bravado stripped away by the inevitability of consequence. We exchanged a few terse words, a curt greeting, a moment of awkward silence, and then he hurried away. In that brief encounter, I sensed an unspoken understanding, as if we were both acknowledging that the past could neither be erased nor redefined by a single moment of regret. It was a bittersweet reminder that some chapters, no matter how painful, must remain as they are, etched into our memories as both a cautionary tale and a catalyst for change. In the midst of these internal and external challenges, my relationship with Daniel began to blossom in unexpected ways. Our conversations deepened, moving from casual banter to soul-searching exchanges about life, loss, and the intricacies of the human heart. Daniel's gentle perspective helped me confront the raw edges of my pain, encouraging me to see that my worth was not diminished by the scars I bore, but rather enhanced by the resilience they represented. Together, we embarked on creative projects, a collaborative art installation that explored themes of betrayal, forgiveness, and rebirth. Working side by side in a sunlit studio, our shared vision took shape in bold, expressive strokes and vivid splashes of color. With every layer of paint applied, I felt as though I was reclaiming another fragment of myself, transforming the remnants of heartbreak into a tapestry of beauty and strength. The project, which we titled Resonance of Renewal, became a symbol of our collective journey, a reminder that even the most fractured souls can find harmony through the transformative power of art. But as our connection deepened, so too did the complexity of my inner world. I found myself grappling with conflicting emotions, the desire to embrace this new love fully, and the persistent ache of memories that refused to fade. There were nights when, despite Daniel's comforting presence, I lay awake wrestling with the remnants of my former life, a life that had been irrevocably altered by betrayal. It was during these quiet, solitary hours that I often returned to my journal, pouring out the tangled thoughts and emotions that refused to be neatly categorized. One entry, written on a rainy night as the rhythmic patter of droplets echoed against my window, read, "I stand at the intersection of who I was and who I am becoming. The past clings like a shadow, but I am learning to walk in the light, one uncertain step at a time." These words, raw and unfiltered, became a mantra that sustained me during moments of doubt, a reminder that the journey toward self-redemption was neither linear nor devoid of setbacks. As autumn deepened into winter, the world outside mirrored the internal landscape of my heart, both barren and filled with the promise of renewal. In this season of introspection, I found myself drawn into conversations about trust and vulnerability, with friends who had also navigated the stormy seas of betrayal. Over long, contemplative evenings, we shared our stories, the times we had been hurt, the moments we had rebuilt, and the gradual, often painful steps toward forgiveness. In these exchanges, I realized that my experience was not an isolated tragedy but part of a larger human narrative, one that spoke of the inevitable intersection between love and loss. One such conversation took place during a chilly evening at a small gathering hosted by a dear friend. As we sat huddled around a crackling fire, someone remarked, "Sometimes, the greatest act of bravery is to trust again, even when the risk of heartbreak looms large." In that moment, the words resonated deeply with me. Trust had once been my foundation, a belief so pure and unblemished that I had never questioned its sanctity. Yet now, I understood that trust was not simply about expecting perfection from others, but about daring to open oneself up to the possibility of both joy and pain. In this environment of shared vulnerability, I began to see that the path to healing was a mosaic of imperfect moments, each slip, each breakthrough, and each quiet act of courage contributing to a narrative of resilience. The scars of betrayal, while indelible, were slowly being transformed into symbols of the strength it took to survive and to thrive in spite of the odds. By the time winter began to wane and hints of spring danced on the horizon, I found myself at a pivotal juncture. My relationship with Daniel, built on a foundation of mutual respect and creative collaboration, was blossoming into something that held the promise of new beginnings. Yet, the path forward was far from straightforward. The shadows of the past still lingered, and I was continually forced to reconcile the parts of myself that had once been defined by heartbreak with the emerging identity of a woman empowered by her own resilience. One crisp morning, as I strolled through a park reborn with the tentative blooms of spring, I paused to reflect on the journey that had brought me to this moment. The air was cool and invigorating, a tangible reminder that, like the changing seasons, life was in a constant state of flux. In that reflective pause, I recognized that my past, with all its turmoil and betrayal, had ultimately paved the way for the person I had become. I had learned that true strength was not the absence of pain, but the ability to transform that pain into something beautiful and meaningful. The realization was both humbling and empowering. I began to see that my story was far from over. It was evolving, each chapter infused with the complexities of love, loss, and the indefatigable human spirit. With renewed determination, I resolved to continue embracing life with an open heart, even as I carried the bittersweet memories of what had been. The journey was not about erasing the past, but about integrating it into a narrative that celebrated survival, creativity, and the capacity for endless reinvention. I stand at a threshold, ready to face the uncertainties of the future with a spirit tempered by experience and a heart unafraid to love again. My path is no longer defined solely by the betrayal that once threatened to consume me, but by the myriad moments of growth, the unexpected kindness of strangers, and the creative sparks that have lit the way forward. I am learning that the art of living lies in the delicate balance between remembering and moving on, cherishing the lessons of the past while daring to dream of a brighter tomorrow. In the midst of this transformation, I find solace in the simple truth that every ending is also a beginning. Each tear shed, each moment of doubt, and every heartbeat echoing in the quiet solitude of my nights has contributed to a tapestry of resilience. I am no longer the woman defined by her pain. I am the architect of my own destiny, continuously reshaping my identity with every choice, every brushstroke on canvas, and every whispered word of forgiveness. The journey ahead remains uncertain, yet it is also filled with the promise of discovery. As I continue to navigate the delicate interplay between the past and the future, I carry with me the lessons learned from betrayal, the wisdom gained from introspection, and the hope kindled by new connections. My life has become a canvas on which I paint my own story, a story of resilience, reinvention, and the quiet, steadfast belief that even in the aftermath of heartbreak, there exists an infinite capacity for renewal. As the days melded into weeks and the warm hues of early summer began to permeate the city, I found myself standing at the precipice of a profound transformation. The chapters of betrayal, vengeance, and healing had woven together into a tapestry of self-discovery that was as intricate as it was bittersweet. The once overwhelming weight of the past had gradually lightened, replaced by a burgeoning hope, a promise that the future held the possibility of joy untainted by regret. It was on a particularly radiant afternoon, with sunlight dappling through the leaves of the park where I often sought solace, that I realized the true extent of my journey. I sat on a weathered bench, the gentle rustle of the trees accompanying my reflective silence, when I recalled the moment that had shattered my world. The vivid memories of late nights spent piecing together evidence, the quiet determination that had fueled every sleepless hour, and the overwhelming surge of triumph when the truth was unveiled in that boardroom. All these recollections had evolved into something far greater than mere acts of revenge. They had become milestones of resilience, stepping stones on the path toward reclaiming my identity. The repercussions of my actions, while initially painful, had rippled far beyond my own life. Jason's world had collapsed under the weight of public scrutiny, and his once pristine reputation had crumbled into irrelevance. I had heard whispers of his internal battles, his attempts to repair a shattered career, and the guilt that haunted him in quiet moments. Yet, despite the chaos he now faced, I knew that my journey was not one of vindictiveness, but of reclamation. The pain I had endured was mine alone, and so too was the power I had found in confronting it head-on. One evening, as the city embraced the cool calm of dusk, I received a message from an unexpected source. Elena, the wise, compassionate mentor who had guided me through the darker corridors of my grief, invited me to an intimate gathering at her studio. The space was an eclectic blend of vintage charm and modern minimalism, with walls adorned by her evocative paintings and shelves filled with books that chronicled decades of human experience. There, amid the soft murmur of heartfelt conversations and the gentle clinking of glasses, I encountered several faces who had, like me, been touched by betrayal and loss. Their stories, interwoven with hope and perseverance, reminded me that my journey was not an isolated odyssey, but a shared human experience. As the night deepened, a quiet moment of communion unfolded between Elena and me. With a tender sincerity that could only come from someone who had lived through similar storms, she said, "Sometimes, the most profound lessons are found in the spaces between our losses and our victories. It is there, in that quiet chasm, that we rebuild ourselves, piece by shattered piece." Her words resonated, echoing the truth that I had long fought to accept, that healing was a continuous process, one that required both grace and the courage to let go. In the midst of this evolving landscape, my connection with Daniel began to reveal deeper layers. Our early meetings, once filled with cautious optimism and gentle curiosity, had grown into a rich dialogue about life, love, and the scars that time could neither erase nor diminish. With each encounter, the initial spark of attraction gave way to a more nuanced understanding of what it meant to open one's heart after it had been broken. Daniel's compassion, paired with his own story of struggle, forged an unspoken bond between us, one that was not defined by the remnants of the past, but by a shared commitment to moving forward. One warm summer evening, Daniel and I found ourselves walking along a riverbank where the city's lights shimmered like distant stars. In the quiet murmur of flowing water, we spoke candidly about our fears, our hopes, and the daunting prospect of embracing love anew. "I never imagined that betrayal could lead to such clarity," Daniel confessed, his voice soft against the backdrop of nature's lullaby. "Sometimes, the only way to rediscover who we truly are is to let go of what we thought defined us." His words, like the gentle cadence of the river, washed over me and reaffirmed that my journey was far from over. It was not a simple return to innocence, but a deliberate, courageous step toward forging a new identity, one that was enriched by the lessons of the past and emboldened by the promise of the future. Yet the path to renewal was not without its lingering shadows. There were moments, quiet, solitary moments, when the memories of that explosive night, the flash of images on the presentation screen, and the echo of whispered betrayals would surface unbidden. During these times, I would retreat to the sanctuary of my own thoughts, allowing myself to feel the sting of old wounds before gently reminding myself that those scars were now symbols of survival rather than defeat. One particular evening, as a storm brewed outside and the sky was painted with turbulent streaks of lightning, I found myself revisiting the evidence of my past in the privacy of my room. Each screenshot, each cryptic message, and each photograph of clandestine encounters served as a stark reminder of the love that had been shattered. However, instead of igniting the familiar flames of anger and despair, I felt a deep, almost serene gratitude for the journey that had led me here. In those reflective hours, I understood that every act of betrayal, every moment of hurt, had ultimately forged a path towards self-discovery and strength. I began to document these reflections in a new series of writings, poetic entries that captured the raw interplay of darkness and light. They were not only cathartic expressions of my inner world, but also a tribute to the transformative power of embracing one's entire self, scars and all. I came to see that the pain was not something to be erased, but to be understood, integrated, and ultimately transcended. As summer ripened into the cusp of fall, an opportunity for final closure presented itself, a chance to confront the remnants of my past in a way that would finally allow me to let go. Jason had been scheduled to speak at a high-profile industry event, an appearance that, by all accounts, seemed designed to salvage what was left of his public image. The announcement stirred a maelstrom of emotions among those who had followed the saga, including myself. Rather than succumb to the familiar urges of resentment, I saw this as the moment to affirm my own journey and declare that my life was no longer tethered to the ghosts of betrayal. On the day of the event, I arrived not as an avenger seeking to watch another's downfall, but as a woman who had reclaimed her power through self-acceptance and resilience. The venue was a grand auditorium, its opulent decor a stark contrast to the raw vulnerability that had defined my own journey. As I took my seat, I couldn't help but reflect on the irony of it all. The very man who had once betrayed my trust was now being paraded as a reformed figure, his mistakes conveniently softened by the passage of time and corporate spin. When Jason took the stage, his eyes darted nervously across the crowd, searching for an anchor in the sea of faces that now looked on with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. For a fleeting moment, I caught his gaze, and in that silent exchange, it was as though he recognized the inevitable truth, that the consequences of his actions were his alone to bear, and that my life, too, had moved irrevocably forward. Throughout his speech, I found myself enveloped in a profound sense of liberation. The echoes of his contrition, the carefully rehearsed apologies, and the hollow promises of change all served to reinforce what I had come to know with unyielding certainty. My worth was not defined by his failures, nor could I ever be held hostage by the mistakes of another. As his words faded into the background, I closed my eyes for a moment, savoring the newfound freedom that came with truly letting go. In the weeks that followed, the tumultuous storm of betrayal finally gave way to a calm clarity. I channeled my energy into building a life that celebrated both my vulnerabilities and my strengths. I continued to nurture my creative endeavors, writing, painting, and even exploring new artistic forms that allowed me to express the multifaceted nature of my journey. Each project was a testament to the resilience that had carried me through the darkest nights and illuminated the path to self-empowerment. Daniel remained a steadfast presence during this time, his unwavering support a gentle reminder that love, when built on the foundation of honesty and mutual growth, could be transformative. Our relationship, once tentative and cautious, blossomed into a partnership that was as authentic as it was inspiring. Together, we explored the possibilities of a future unburdened by the past, a future where every setback was a lesson and every joy a shared victory. At long-forgotten corners of the city, I revisited places that had once been laden with painful memories. The bistro where Jason and I had once shared laughter, the park where we had strolled hand in hand under starlit skies. Each location now served as a silent testament to the passage of time and the healing power of perspective. Rather than a shrine to what had been lost, these spaces became markers of my journey, a visual narrative of rebirth, resilience, and hope. In quiet moments of solitude, I often reflected on the person I had become. No longer was I defined solely by the pain of betrayal. I was a mosaic of experiences, a blend of sorrow and joy, loss and triumph. The scars that had once felt like insurmountable burdens now shimmered like delicate constellations, each marking a chapter of survival and the unwavering determination to rise above adversity. As autumn descended, bringing with it a palette of golds, russets, and deep blues, I organized a small gathering at my apartment. a celebration of life, creativity, and the unyielding spirit of renewal. Friends, old and new, gathered in a space filled with soft music, warm laughter, and an atmosphere of acceptance. It was a night of shared stories, where we recounted our journeys of love, loss, and the small triumphs that had defined our paths. In that intimate circle, I found myself speaking candidly about my experiences, not as a cautionary tale, but as a celebration of the resilience that had carried me through. I learned, I told them, that every heartbreak holds within it the seeds of growth. What we once saw as an end can become the foundation for a new beginning. It's not about forgetting the pain, but about embracing it, learning from it, and using it to fuel our journey toward a brighter future. My words, spoken with quiet conviction, resonated deeply with those who had gathered, a shared acknowledgement that our stories, with all their twists and turns, were what made us uniquely strong. As the night drew to a close and the last echoes of laughter faded into the crisp autumn air, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. I was no longer the person who had been defined by betrayal. I was someone who had reclaimed her narrative, who had transformed her pain into a powerful testament to the strength of the human spirit. In the final moments of that transformative chapter, I stood before a mirror in my small but warmly lit apartment. I looked at the woman reflected back at me, eyes that had seen the depths of despair and the heights of redemption, a smile that bore the quiet confidence of someone who had weathered storms and emerged stronger on the other side. In that silent moment of self-recognition, I understood that every decision, every tear, and every breath had led me to this very moment of clarity and renewal. The journey was far from over, yet I had reached a profound milestone. I had confronted my past, embraced my present, and with cautious optimism, stepped toward a future filled with promise. I knew there would be more challenges ahead, more nights of reflection and days of rebuilding, but I was ready. My heart, once fractured by betrayal, now beat with a rhythm that celebrated life, resilience, and the endless possibilities of reinvention. As I penned the final lines of my latest entry in a journal that had become my constant companion, I couldn't help but marvel at how a single act of betrayal had unfolded into a journey of self-discovery. What began as a moment of profound loss had ultimately blossomed into a narrative of triumph, a narrative that reminded me that sometimes the most significant victories arise from the deepest wounds. I set down my pen with a serene smile, confident that the legacy of my experiences would not be defined by the actions of another, but by my own unyielding capacity to transform, to forgive, and to love again. This time with a wisdom born of hardship and an unshakable belief in the beauty of new beginnings. In that final act of self-reclamation, I realized that the greatest revenge was not in causing further harm, but in rising above the pain to create a life that shone with the brilliance of hope and self-respect. I had discovered that every ending was merely a precursor to a new, unwritten chapter, a chapter that held the promise of love,